morning. It's good to see you all. I pray you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and welcome to the season of Advent. Just a brief word about Advent so that we can kind of put our biblical texts, our hymns and anthems, and our preaching and teaching and prayers in kind of their proper liturgical context. For the church, this won't come as any surprise to you. You are probably aware of this. It's not Christmas yet, right? It's not Christmas yet. Christmas, the season, actually begins on, surprise, Christmas Day, the 25th of December for the church, and it runs 12 days through January the 5th. That's the day before Epiphany and the beginning of the season of Epiphany. More than you probably wanted to know, but just a little kind of framework for us to have in mind as we think about passages like the one that we have today. Now, it doesn't mean you can't put up a tree. Obviously, we've done that. Buy gifts, have a party, sing a carol or two. You can stream Michael Bublé and Mariah Carey till your hearts are content. Help her make a whole lot more money on that song that she has made a ridiculous amount of money on. Whoever wrote that contract was a genius, and he or she should be commended for their work. But it's about how we prepare to receive Christ whenever and however Christ comes to us. Advent is a moment in a very busy season to pause, to breathe, to think about our lives in these between times, between Christ's coming and Christ's coming again. It's hard to do in a very busy season, but it's important work. So we gather for worship, we light candles on a wreath, we sing hymns, Come Thou Long Expected Jesus, that point to the coming of Christ, and we read interesting and sometimes perplexing passages like the one from Matthew's Gospel. But about that day, Matthew writes, and hour, no one knows. Neither the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Friends, this is a word about time. About the time when one day everything will be put right. When heaven and earth will be as one, and all things will be as they should be. They'll be as we hope and long for them to be. Christ came in the weakness of our flesh and the ordinariness of our lives to begin God's work of reshaping the world, of putting things right. And we believe and confess Christ will come again to finish what has been started. And we live in the time in between. What are we to make of this time? What do we do with it? So this odd passage from Matthew's Gospel has been misread, misunderstood, and misused since at least about the mid-1800s, when Christians in Scotland developed a way of reading the Bible which included the idea of something we know as the rapture. An idea later popularized by a person in the U.S. named John Nelson Darby. And to make a long and very complicated story short, the idea of a rapture is part of a whole system of belief in which passages like the one from Matthew's Gospel are treated like a kind of secret code to predict a fiery, distant end of the world where the faithful are raptured. That is, they're snatched up into the sky in a glorious personal escape from the trials and tribulations of this world that will be faced by those who are, wait for it, left behind. Dan Brown's books and movies are fun and entertaining, but they're wrong. I remember in high school, I think our Fellowship of Christian Athletes went to a local church to see a movie. It's that movie, some of you have seen it, where someone's mowing the lawn, and then the next thing you know, the lawnmower's just sitting there running. Or there's a blender going in the kitchen and someone in the kitchen, and the next thing you know, it's just the blender running. Well-intentioned, but not sound biblical interpretation. N.T. Wright notes, this way of interpreting passages like the one we have today is really a misreading. And what it does is it misreads Jewish apocalyptic imagery, and it replaces it with an escapist theology that would have been completely foreign to a Jewish prophet like Jesus of Nazareth. The central question Matthew has for us today and throughout the season of Advent is not, when do I get to leave all this behind? When do I get to escape? The question is, how do I live faithfully in the time between Christ coming and Christ coming again? How do I use this time to participate in God's unfolding project to reshape the world? How do I do it right here and right now? Because that's what the incarnation means. That's the point of Christmas. Not looking for the day when we can escape into heaven and leave all this behind, but God coming in the flesh, moving into the neighborhood, as Eugene Peterson put it, to make the neighborhood over and inviting us to join in the work. Today's reading, along with much of Matthew 24, is not a set of clues for us to use to determine some secret end of time. It's a message of hope and a call to action for faithful people. Earlier in Matthew's gospel, Jesus notices that the disciples are enamored by the grandeur of the temple, by the strength and power of the institution. And Jesus tells them that the time is coming, you may remember this story, when not one stone of the temple will be left. It's his way of saying to them, as you live in this time, this moment, as you participate in God's mission to heal and renew and restore the world, don't place your trust there. All the institutions and old order of things are passing away. Don't cling to them. Don't look backward. Be faithful in the moment. God's future is coming. In fact, Jesus would say, because of me, Jesus, it's already here. Using language from the book of Daniel that would have been familiar to his listeners, Jesus is reminding them and us that with the coming of the Son of Man, the only future is God's future. And the only authentic choice is to follow. Because the future will be defined not by institutions and principalities and powers and temples and high priests and kings and Caesars and politicians, but the future will be determined by a merciful God. And because of this, you can join that God in rebuilding with hope. And so to drive the point home, Jesus reminds them of another story with which they would have been familiar. Noah, the ark, and the flood. In the days before the flood, they were simply living their lives until the day Noah entered the ark. They knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. Again, this is about time. Not looking for some mysterious moment in the future, but how we live now, today. Knowing that God's future is unfolding. Because if you notice, usually we read that second part of Matthew 24, but we forget the Noah part. In the days of Noah, who was swept away? The unrighteous, the unfaithful, those who were not aligned with God's hope and dream for the world. And the ones who were left behind, so to speak, were the faithful remnant. Noah, his family, his friends, the heart, the center of God's project to reshape the world. So building on that image, Jesus says, 2 are in the field, 1 is left, 1 is taken. 2 are grinding meal, 1 is taken, 1 is left. Keep awake. Make the most of the time. The point of the whole passage is not that the faithful will one day be whisked off to heaven where we can be with Jesus and avoid the messiness of life or the needs and suffering of our neighbors. The whole point is that with the coming of the Son of Man, with the birth of Jesus, things have changed. And what matters now is the stance of the disciple in a world that is changed and is changing. In other words, the question is, how do we wait until the day when God's plan to reshape the world is complete? Advent is about that. It's about learning how to watch and to wait, how to live in the time in between, reminding us that we wait, not hoping that God's going to come take us away from all of this and seal us off in some paradise away from the troubles that are all around us and the needs of the world. No, Advent says we wait expectantly, actively, not trying to decipher signs in the heavens, but always being about the mission of Jesus. Preaching and teaching the good news of God's love for all people, showing mercy, working for justice, laboring for righteousness, never relaxing our intent to work for God's plan to make things new. And yes, it can be difficult, even on the best of days, and especially hard when day after day you've given yourself to this work in this time, and things don't seem to be any better today than they were yesterday. And the church and the world seem just as big a mess today as they were a week ago. Might be easier if we did know that, tomorrow Jesus is coming. He's going to pat us on the shoulder, tell us it's all going to be all right. Well done. You've done your part. Now go off to your vacation in the sky. But when tomorrow is just one more today, and all our labors of love seem to be, as Tom Long put it, poured into a bottomless pit of suffering and cynicism and indifference, then it can be hard to keep working at being a disciple. So in the face of the overwhelming needs of the world, the way, he says, to preserve hope, the way to press on, the way to keep loving, to keep extending mercy, to keep being faithful, is not to live thinking that any moment we might get caught up in a heaven and taken away from all of this, but to trust that at any moment we may be surprised by the sudden presence of God. The God who shows up again and again, who didn't keep a safe distance, but came to be with us in the flesh, to begin the work of healing and renewing and rebuilding and putting everything right. The God who now invites us in our time, this time, to join him in healing and renewing the world one neighbor at a time. Among the greatest dangers in misreading this passage is that we're lulled into spiritual laziness and irrelevance. If we believe the world is simply going to be destroyed and we're all heading for a non-physical cloud heaven, then why bother? Why bother? Why bother caring about justice or creation or feeding the hungry or serving the poor or setting the captives free? Why bother about any of it? Why bother if we're going to leave all this behind anyway? Advent says just the opposite. God loves this so much that God is making it new. The King has come, and he will come again to receive his kingdom. The great defining moment of history has already taken place. The new age is here, and Jesus is calling us to a richer, more robust hope. So don't worry about when. No one knows that. Not even the Son knows that. Instead, focus on the how and the what. How am I living today? With justice and with kindness and with mercy, with active creative love? What am I building today? Beauty, caring for creation, loving my neighbor, being a beacon of resurrection in the community? What will we do with these between times, with our time? Advent invites us to be alert, to watch, to wait, to work, to be faithful, to plant seeds of God's new creation, because the Son of Man is coming. God's future is unfolding, Jesus says. Pay attention, watch for it, be alert, which means the time for faithful revolutionary work is now. Amen.